We're going to get back at it. And today we're going to talk about the first hot war of the Cold War. The background to the Korean War, this first hot war of the Cold War, is the end of World War II. Korea is going to be divided at an arbitrary line across the middle of Korea called the 38th parallel, with the Soviet Union in the north and the United States in the south as the countries that drove the Japanese out of the Korean Peninsula. Now, this is originally going to be seen as a temporary division, but each side will create their own separate administrations. And we're going to get a common theme here through the Cold War stories, whether it's talking about Germany or later Vietnam. Temporary divisions often turn out to be permanent divisions. Now, neither the United States nor the Soviet Union really want to focus on what's going on in East Asia. Their biggest issues are over in Europe. And so they will each leave the occupation of the Korean Peninsula, leaving for the United States the South to be led by Syngman Rhee, and in the north, the Soviet Union will support Kim Il Sung. Now, each Syngman Rhee and Kim Il Sung are Korean nationalists. They each want to unify Korea under their own rule. But in the years after World War II, we are going to see two separate nations evolve: the Republic of Korea, which is South Korea, and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the North. And the United States and the Soviet Union are simply going to leave the peninsula to focus on Europe. Now, both of these divided sides of Korea want to unify, but neither of them really has the ability to do so. This all comes to a head in 1950 when Kim Il Sung in North Korea will reach out to the Soviet Union and Joseph Stalin for support in helping him unify the nation. The Soviets, who, as we already said, are more focused on what's going on in Europe, push Kim to reach out to Mao Zedong, the new leader of communist China. This is right after the victory of the communists in the Chinese Civil War. So Kim will reach out to Mao, who's going to offer support to Kim in hopes of receiving maybe future Soviet assistance for an invasion of Taiwan to reunify China. That invasion of South Korea from the North Koreans is going to come on the 25th of June, 1950, where 90,000 North Korean soldiers will invade across that 38th parallel. Now, from the United States perspective, this is a clear example of Soviet expansionism. Remember, NSC 68 says all communist activity around the world is directed by the Soviet Union. So even though this is really a nationalist thing by Kim Il Sung, the United States is viewing it as Soviet aggression. And failure to respond to that aggression would harm the credibility of the United States. This is going to be seen as the application of the Truman Doctrine and the containment policy now in East Asia. In fact, Harry Truman even says that Korea becomes the Greece of the Far East. The United States will go to the United Nations Security Council for a resolution for a military intervention in Korea. And this will pass. Recall that the Soviet Union boycotted the Security Council because of the United Nations handling of the China question. By July 1st, some of the first United Nations forces are going to land in Korea, and later others arrive under the leadership of an American general, Douglas MacArthur. Now, the Korean War is a very difficult war. The initial push by the North Koreans will push the South Korean forces deep into South Korea around the city of Busan, while United Nations forces will land further to the north at Incheon. And you guys can see how this map is going to evolve over time. Once the United Nations forces arrive, the North Koreans are pushed back all the way past the 38th parallel. And that's where the United States makes a decision to go from a containment policy to a policy of rollback to try to regain land from communist control. And the Americans and the UN forces will begin to push the North Koreans all the way to the north of the Korean Peninsula. It is then where China will truly back up the North Koreans by sending over 200,000 troops into the Korean Peninsula, forcing the UN forces back into a retreat across the 38th parallel. The United States will revert to a containment policy. President Truman is going to have to remove Douglas MacArthur from his command, as MacArthur was publicly condemning the Truman administration for not using nuclear weapons against this invasion from China. And peace talks began between the North and the South Koreans. But this war would continue for 2 long years until 1953. By the end of the war, an armistice is signed in the summer of 1953. We're going to see effects all around the world. First, the United States, seeing this as a Soviet provocation, will increase their land forces in Europe. And they'll also move to strengthen NATO by allowing West Germany, Greece, and Turkey all to be admitted into that organization. The National Security Council's recommendations in NSC 68 to triple the defense budget, that will be implemented following the Korean War. The United States will pledge to defend other Asian states like Japan with the Treaty of San Francisco that will allow the United States to maintain military forces in Japan, while the United States will help Japan grow economically to defend against the spread of communism there. The United States will also create a new anti-communist bloc in Asia called SEATO, the Southeast Asian Treaty Organization. The United States would pledge the defense of Taiwan and continue to recognize it as the only Chinese state, which it will do until 1971. And the US will support other governments in Asia to resist the spread of communism in places like the Philippines and in Vietnam. And we'll talk much more about Vietnam in days to come. For Korea, this means permanent division. North Korea will remain under communist rule, ruled by that Kim dynasty. South Korea is going to, over time, become a model of capitalist success in East Asia, with investments from both America and Japan, creating South Korea as a major economic player in the world. For China, the Korean War is going to bring its isolation from the United States. The United States and China literally fought a war with each other. But it's going to bolster the Mao regime, because Mao will use propaganda from the Korean War to strengthen his control in China, that he was able to push back and defeat the United States. The possibility of uniting China, Taiwan, and the mainland becomes even more distant, as the United States will pledge to defend Taiwan. And Stalin's reluctance to support Mao anymore during this conflict would lead to a disconnect between those two and begin what is known as the Sino-Soviet split between China and the Soviet Union. For the Soviet Union, there's no direct tensions, but the United States increasing military spending in Europe and in Asia will force the Soviet Union to follow that same line. And now they've got tensions with the People's Republic of China. For Southeast Asia, they will now become a part of the Cold War. Now they are involved. Now the United States is focused on stopping the spread of communism in Asia. And it's going to be harder now for nationalist movements, for example, in Vietnam, to triumph, as the United States is now taking its containment policy to Asia. We'll talk to you next time.